Welcome to episode 3 of the Director's Chair. I'm your host, Cody House, and with me are my wonderful task force of the Bookhouse Boys, Kevin Polly and Colin Smith. How are you, gentlemen?
Doing great.
Good to go. Ready and waiting to talk about the finale of season 1 of Twin Peaks. We're going to hit it tonight.
Yeah, we are wrapping up season 1 of Twin Peaks in our David Lynch series. And man, oh man, does it leave us with a lot of cliffhangers. A lot of things get solved in season 1, but there's a lot of things left on the table.
Yeah, I was really reminded.
As a good television show would do.
I was really reminded while watching this that just what a amazing first season this show had, right? Like it was just so perfect from beginning to end, and I remember the rewatching that season finale. It's just so classic season finale, right? Like it's every single storyline is left on a cliffhanger, and it's just packed with, I don't know if I've ever seen a show pack so much, so many things dangling off the side of that cliff.
Exactly. And with the streaming television shows, a lot of people being like, why can't we go back to 22 episodes? There is something to say about an 8 to 10 episode season of television because you have no fat usually. There's no filler episodes. It's just, let me tell you a narrative story that's 8 to 10 hours long, and we wrap it up and leave you wanting more.
Yeah, 100%. I think this is Twin Peaks is a really good example of the pros and cons of the,
which is what it should do.
Yeah.
So where you guys want to begin?
Well, we're jumping ahead there, talking about the end. I guess we've got season episodes 5, 6, and 7.
Yes,
according to the official numbering, and I really felt like more than the first half of the season, this back half got really procedural. There was some of that in the first bit, but this one felt like it was really moving the mysteries along. There was a lot of exposition, a lot of clues, a lot of investigations. And I don't know if that's I think a lot of Twin Peaks fans associate that end of the story with Mark Frost more than David Lynch, and I wonder if Frost was maybe a little more influential in these last few episodes. I mean, he directed the season finale,
and he wrote 2 of the 3. He's credited as the main writer.
Yeah,
but I think you're onto something, because we not only are we getting the main procedural of them trying to solve Laura Palmer's murder, but we've got the James and Donna little game they're playing, and we've got Audrey's little investigation. I mean, they're all kind of tied to the main story, and then the whole Benjamin Horne, Catherine Martell drama, which has Josie and now Norma's husband Hank involved.
Yeah. It also gets a bit soapier too. It plays up more of the soapy elements for sure, with all those plot lines sort of coming together, and but it's still just so on point. I think each episode really doing what it needs to and doing a lot of heavy lifting, and we still get some quintessential Twin Peaks moments in these, but it does feel less focused on the quirkiness and more focused on the let's advance the plot, advance the character arcs, move the mystery along, all of that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do get the whole, they're tracking in the woods and they lead to Log Lady's cabin, and then her and Hawk's whole exchange. and getting more of what Kevin was bringing up a couple of weeks ago about Hawk's general respect for Log Lady, because they both have a sense of like the supernatural or forces that can't be explained. Like they know something darker and more sinister is in the woods of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that they're like on a different level of everybody else. Like, and I love that Cooper also is willing to be on that level. Like he's willing to take a look at things on a different plane of existence than most people do. And I think that's what, again, it's what makes every character in this show work so well is, Cooper comes in and he's the guy who's supposed to take over the investigation. He's the Fed. And instead he's the guy who relies on everyone in that town and everybody in that sheriff's department and knows their strengths and plays to them. And I love that Hawk, gets to have that kind of strength being shown through his connection to Margaret. And I love that he absolutely does not laugh at her. He does not, talk down about her. Like he knows that she's kind of, like I think I said last time, she's like playing 4D chess. Everybody else is like in 3D, 2D chess. She's playing 4D chess because she's seen shit that most people couldn't even begin to comprehend. And so it's one of the things I've always loved their dynamic, and there is such payoff to that in The Return. One of my single favorite things that Lynch has ever shot is their final scene together. Without spoiling anything until we get there, it should have won an Emmy right there. Like that right there should have gotten an Emmy. It was a beautiful, beautiful payoff. So I love the fact that we get to know more about the Log Lady and Hawk and again, just that the Bookhouse Boys in general, you got Doc Hayward along for the ride with them and stuff like that. Stuff's so golden. It's so golden. Like there's just so much to love in this first season. It really is all killer, no filler. It really is. And that's not just storylines. That's also characters. Every character that gets any kind of screen time is worthy of that screen time.
Yes. Yeah, it's really just, it's such a solid season and such a solid piece of television this first season. I think you're 100% right on all that. There's again I do feel like there's a shift in tone in terms of how much more plot driven things become, but it really is done in such a good way. It's not a criticism at all. Like it really is feeding this complicated and interesting story, and it's developing these complicated and interesting characters that are most of them not they're all three-dimensional characters.
Yes.
Just fascinating to watch this all sort of come together, and there's still the mystery sort of playing out, and clues being given, and a lot of distractions being given. It's I think you're right. There's not really wasted moments in any of this.
No.
And hats off.
There's so few episodes there really couldn't afford to be. Like there's so little that they have time to do with that they had to make sure that everything is driving the narrative. There's no padding in there. Now, season 2, we get to see a little bit of that. Not that it ever, to me, it's still better padding than most long seasons will have, because it's at least so weird and quirky that I'm just kind of like, okay, I can hang with it. But this first season, I mean, to me, if you're writing a season of television, I mean, I would tell anybody, like, watch the first season of Twin Peaks. Everything you need to do is in the first season of Twin Peaks. It really is a perfect season of television. I can honestly say that, and not just as a fanboy. I can say that as just looking at how you structure a television series, any kind of long narrative. Everything that you're supposed to do, they did in this first season. You can tell that they really took the time to make sure that all of these characters, like, the great thing about it is you've got all these different storylines, but they are all connected. They're all connected in their own cool way. And that's the neat thing about it. This little town is so small. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody's business. And it's just so neat how it all weaves together. Every B storyline is still somehow connected to Laura Palmer, is still somehow connected to the town of Twin Peaks. Like that's really no easy feat, man. I mean, that's really impressive when you think about it, that every character in this season in some way, shape, or form is connected to the potential, the murder of Laura Palmer and the potential connection to that, as well as just to the town itself. It's really like there's a lot to appreciate in this season. And it's one of those things I don't think, even when it was being talked about like it was, I don't think it got the appreciation it deserved from a writing and story structure standpoint. I really don't think people were so excited about the quirkiness of it and the weirdness of it and the quirky characters, but no one was talking about the fact that, man, this is how you structure a season of television. Like, everybody take note. This is how you get it done.
And especially all these multiple characters. It's got to be, if it's not over 20 characters, it's close to 20 characters. They are juggling between, and all of these characters, as you guys have said, they're fully dimensional characters. And yes, that's partly the actors involved, but
Absolutely.
it is definitely the writers, these writers in the writers' room ability to weave a cohesive story and make it engaging throughout these 8 hours of this first season.
I like what you said about how everything's connected to the murder, and I think that's one of the strengths of this show is that it really doesn't just use the death, the murder, the mystery as a gimmick or as a hook. It really implicates everybody, and it shows how a horrific incident like this really does ripple out and how it affects everyone. And I think that's part of the genius of the show as well.
Oh, by and far. Yeah, by and far. You really feel the impact of her death. And that's, again, kudos to Lynch, to Frost, to the cast, every writer and director in this first season. I mean, it really is just, for lack of a better word, I can genuinely say it's a perfect season of television. Everything that you would want a season to do: introduce you to a new world, introduce you to new characters, keep building the mythos every single episode, developing those hooks that keep you coming back. It's all there on display, man. It's all there on display. And it's absolutely, it's perfect. It just really is. It's a perfect season of television.
Yeah. Drop the mic. Agreed. If you want to know how to structure a TV show, these are 8 episodes to follow. So is there something particular you guys want to point out in episode 5 that you liked or thought was interesting?
Well, as I mentioned, it did have a some of the iconic Twin Peaks moments, like the Audrey's arc here is so great through these episodes, but it starts here with her getting the job at the perfume counter, which is such a great scene. That's one of the highlights for sure of this episode for sure.
That's a boss move. That is a boss move, not only because she's using her wits but she's also using her name, that what power her dad holds in the town too.
Yes. Well, and like I said last week, Audrey to me is like one of the coolest characters in the series, because like she doesn't have to do any of the things that she does. And she first kind of starts messing with her dad just literally for shits and giggles, just because she can get under his skin and that's fun to her. But this is like her, obviously she does have the crush on Agent Cooper. We know that that's a driving factor here. But the simple fact is she is literally putting herself in the line of fire. She is putting herself in harm's way because she's literally taking the same steps that Laura took that led her down that path. She's almost like an investigator, or like an undercover cop. For lack of a better phrase, that's sort of what she is in that role. And I always love the fact that even when she goes in to talk to the guy at the department store who runs it, she literally is just like, if you don't let me do this, I will tell everybody that you touched me inappropriately. And it's just like, boss ass bitch the minute she walks in the door, man. Like, Audrey is iconic in that moment. Like, that's where she really steps up, man. She's on her game. I think for me though, for this episode, the thing I'll always go back to is the discovery of the log cabin. With the whole everything where Laura was with Leo and Jacques. And of course, when you know the film, that log cabin has, of course, tremendously terrifying implications. But even when you don't know the film, when you get to that log cabin, it's genuinely creepy. Like that stuff.
Oh,
there's no
yeah.
end. It's completely empty. Such an atmosphere of it that you know that really bad things went down, and you know that it's connected to the last night that Laura Palmer like took a breath on this planet. Mm-hmm. That really there's just so much going on in that scene alone. The music playing on the record play, it's so eerie. That scene right there is probably my favorite scene in this episode. It is just so like creepy, almost ethereal the way it plays out. And then finding the chip, finding, you know, the little clues and stuff. It's such a creepy, cool moment. And of course, it really does set up everything with Jacques Renault, who of course becomes a very important, you know, figure in the next 2 episodes. Yeah, that to me, that scene right there, like that's the stuff right there, man. I also love Dr. Jacoby's scene with Bobby. We talked a little bit about that last week. He just straight up calls out Bobby on his bullshit, man. It's just like,
yep,
he's just right on it, man. Like, but I'll say this, you know, I do not think that the actor who plays Bobby, Dana Ashbrook, I don't think he has ever gotten enough credit for his performance on that show.
Yeah.
I don't think he has. He's one of the name.
Yeah, when he breaks down there with Jacoby, that is genuinely a powerful scene. It's the first time we've seen a chink in Bobby's armor, like a real chink in his armor. And Dana Ashbrook sells the shit out of that scene. Like it's very funny the way Jacoby is just so upfront with him, like just like cut the crap. Like, I know you're you know, I know who you are, I know what you're about. Like, let's just quit this crap. You and I don't have to pretend that we're doing something that your parents think we're doing. Let's just be real. Let's just talk, you know? I really do love that scene. But for me, that scene in the woods, the cabin in the woods, no pun intended of the film, that is genuinely such a terrifying moment. And such a, again, it's that hook that keeps you, you know, like interested in the murder of Laura Palmer. There's continuously new things per episode that we're learning about that night. And that is a hell of a scene that really does continue that hook being dug into you to find out what the hell happened to this girl on the night she was murdered.
It's really chilling, and like without the context of the movie, like just seeing what's left, the remains of that room, you just know something sinister and cringy was going on in this cabin. And you it makes your skin crawl, but at the same time you're hooked because you're like, okay, we're finding things out about what's going on in this investigation.
I think it's in that moment. I think Hawk is the one that picks up that someone was watching through the window. And of course, when you know the film, you know who that someone is. They actually show that scene clearly. But I thought, man, like they really had that scene figured out. Like they knew what they were doing when they went and did Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me. Boy, there's a lot of setup in that series that has payoff when you finally see the film and see what happened the night she was murdered.
Right. And you know, what's interesting about that is that another thing I noticed over the course of these 3 episodes is they've been building up red herrings for a little while with Dr. Jacoby and Leo. And by the end of this season, you know, they're not the killers, like as much as they had been building them up as being these red herrings. And it's so effectively done because it's not like they were just cheap distraction characters that could have been, but it turns out they're just not. They're still integral to what happened that night. And their role, like that bottle broke on Leo's name for a reason. He was really close to the death of Laura Palmer.
Yes,
but
he was.
He wasn't the real killer wasn't a J and wasn't on that list.
No.
And so I think the way they tie in, like, you know, and that just makes the ending of this season so much more powerful, because everything you thought was likely to be the case is like, well, now what? Like, if it's not Leo, if it's not Dr. Jacoby, right?
Who is it?
Yeah. And so you're right. Like, there's somebody else watching the window. That, you know, that it was a huge part of, you know, breaking down the expectations. And another thing I want to say is, you were talking about Audrey. I completely agree, I think, with both Bobby and Audrey and how interesting their characters are and the great performances involved. One of the things that I think really works for Audrey too is, as much as she is badass. As much as she in both emulates and rebels against her father in terms of his own sort of like domineering of the town, but she's also still a little girl in a lot of ways. Like she's
absolutely
both at once. She's a a strong woman and a little girl at the same time. And I just think that the actor's portrayal of her is so strong in terms of balancing those factors, because she's only 18, she's still a kid, but she's also stepping out and doing all of this stuff, but she does it in a way that puts herself in danger and is reckless in a way, but also brave, but stupid. And this episode ends with a stupid moment, right? When
her trying to seduce an investigator of the FBI. But I mean, you summed up anything that an intelligent, mature teenager is. They're still children. There's still vulnerability. There's still inexperience. There's still naive.
There's a bravery there. Almost a little stupidity there. That you have when you're a teen or early 20 something, you think you're invincible as well. So
maybe it's more naivete than stupidity. It's lack of experience more than, because she's not stupid. I don't mean to imply
no. But I mean, there is that bit of recklessness, which is a little bit of the headstrongness of being a teen. I mean, like it to me, the scene. Of course, we end on a hell of a cliffhanger with her being totally naked in Cooper's bed, where you're like, oh. This is not good.
Yep.
Like, I know she's 18, but this is not good.
No. Yeah.
I will say we forgot one key moment in this episode that is also a chilling episode, and that is when Shelley shoots Leo.
Yes.
Yep.
She
finally.
The sound that Leo makes is one of the most chilling screams I've ever heard in a television series. And the way Shelley describes it, like he sounded like a wounded animal, man, Eric DeRay nailed that. He definitely got the assignment on that. That is a terrifying moment. And you don't see what happens, which is what makes it so much scarier. We don't see like the angle of the shot. We just see Shelley pull up that gun and fire. We don't know how the shot goes, but we know the light gets hit because it's swinging around and it's making everything look freaky and stuff. That scene is truly like, man, because as the audience, you're rooting for Shelley to just get rid of Leo. You absolutely want her to get out of that situation. And B, Leo is an absolute piece of shit. So you absolutely want to see Leo get his comeuppance. But we also know that Leo is an abusive, scary, almost force of nature. He is, man, I mean, he is like an animal. And that, to me, is a hell of a scene in that episode.
Absolutely. And what's interesting is it comes right after another pivotal scene for Leo, because throughout this first season, Leo is a very intimidating, scary, horrible human being. And then we get to watch Leo be in fear when Hank basically beats the shit out of him.
He says, hold my beer, homie. Hold my beer.
This is my town.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Leo is a full-on villain. There's no redeeming qualities in Leo, and I like that they, and that, again, the way that, because this whole story ends up being about abuse, the fact that we see more of it spilling out throughout the town, and see how normalized, domestic violence is. I think that's an important part of this too. I like that the series never tries to give him a redemption arc, because he's an asshole, and he's an abuser, and he's and he's scary. And as much as he's not the killer, he's still a full-on villain, and he's still full-on.
He's still a force to be reckoned with. But what really makes the stuff with Hank so interesting is because it now makes us nervous for Norma.
Oh, absolutely. Because we know how.
If Hank is scary to Leo, then Christ Almighty, we need to be making sure Norma's okay. Because that's a bad situation there, man. Damn, that's terrible.
Can I ask you guys about that? Because I've had a discussion. I had a discussion with this, and it didn't dawn on me until we just had this conversation. But a long time ago, I had a discussion with someone about this. Is that because I also agree that Hank is pretty much a full-on bad guy too. There's very little redeeming about Hank, but don't. I think I don't believe he's abusive to Norma. Not in that way. Not in a physical way.
No.
No, he is very manipulative
Yes.
and
Yes.
Yeah.
Exploitative.
he's exploitive. He's abusing her in a different way, but no, I don't think he physically, because I think in his twisted mind he does love her, but
And let's
it's
be honest, if he was, do you think Big Ed Hurley would let that man walk in that? No,
Exactly. That's
No.
But also
Big Ed
Norma
would not be having
presents,
anything with that.
right. But Norma also presents as someone who's not being physically abused or hadn't been physically abused.
Yeah, she doesn't show the signs.
Right.
She just married the wrong man, and now she's kind of, she doesn't know how to get rid of
him. He wouldn't hurt her if it suited his purpose for some reason. I'm not saying
right. I think he would if it.
No angel. Yeah, shit no.
Yeah, he's out for his personal self. Now, is it the next episode we have the scene, or is it the finale where him and Josie have their whole scene and he's basically
we had an arrangement scene?
The blackmail scene where he's basically trying to get more money. He's like, well, how much is 18 months of my life?
Finale.
Great
scene, amazing scene. Because I just watched it, so it's fresh in my mind. I love that scene for so many reasons. Chris Mulkey is so good in his whole monologue there, and so is Joan Chen, just doing that one line over and over again. Like, it's just such an amazing scene in terms of the power dynamics, and again how complicated a character both of them end up. They're both complicated characters. Yeah. So no, that's a great scene. You're right, and he ends up being a really fascinating character. Hank does. Again, full on bad guy, and not giving him any any sympathy or anything, but a really fascinating character for sure. And like I said, the only thing he's got going for him is that he doesn't beat his wife.
Right. Yeah, that's sad that's like the exception.
This is one good thing.
I will say we need to mention the party though. Because in this episode we find out that Catherine and Ben Horn are buddy ready to torch that mill. The other thing is, this is where Leland starts to come back in. He's trying to get back into his rhythm. At the beginning of the episode, we see him go to talk to the Horns, and he's just trying to. He's like, I'm ready to get back, and they're like, get him the hell out of here. We don't need him here.
Yeah, you're gonna mess up this deal.
Exactly, because the Icelanders are in, and of course Cooper doesn't sleep because the Icelanders are in. So,
won't stop singing.
They will not, and they got to get adjusted to the time change. But I will say, this is again one of those moments where you can laugh at a scene and you can also be genuinely upset by a scene. Yeah. And that's when Leland starts dancing.
Yeah.
It is heartbreaking because, again, we know that Leland is processing the death of his daughter. It's funny in the fact that he's dancing in the middle of the room and Ben Horn looks at Catherine and he's like, take care of this.
Right.
And she starts dancing with them. Now, the funny part, of course, is Catherine trying to do what he's doing. So when he's all like holding it, she's all like, that is, that's funny. I'm sorry.
The Icelanders all start copying.
Yeah. And they all start doing it.
Yeah. But again, you see Leland's breakdown, and watch Audrey in the background as well. She is absolutely heartbroken for Leland.
You're right. That's a really good observation.
Literally take his grief and turn it into some mask of it. Some sick game of it, almost, with their dancing. That scene is a really potent scene. It's again, upon first viewing, you can kind of laugh at just the silliness of what Catherine's doing, and again, the whole room doing it. It's so weird and funky and weird. But when you're really looking at what's going on at Leland's breakdown, it really is a heartbreaking scene. And Audrey's response is the appropriate one. This is really, really sad. This man's grief is full blown on display. It is out of control. And everybody, is trying to put it in the corner and make light of it so that it doesn't interfere with a goddamn real estate deal. It's so heartbreaking. Again, that grief. And again, Ray Wise, how he has never achieved an Emmy Award or a damn Academy Award nomination for his work in the film. I will never understand that as long as I live. He is so effortlessly awesome as Leland Palmer. He just is that character. And that moment, again, as a teenager watching the show, I thought it was really funny in that everybody's trying to distract themselves from what's going on. Now, as a parent who has lost a child, that scene, man, it really punched me in the gut this time going back and rewatching it. Like, again, I can still chuckle at what Catherine does. It is it's so goofy looking the way that she's trying to play it up. But what Ray Wise taps into is just that genuine, just pure grief, that transformative grief. It really is like, man, that scene plays so different for me now at 47 than it did when I was 15. You know, it's you change as you get older. You appreciate things differently. Watching this whole season again, you know, where I'm at now in my life has really made it just punch at me that much more. And it really just continues to redefine why Twin Peaks is my favorite show of all time. And there's so much going on and it has so much to offer. There are so many different layers that you can take in, and you can watch an episode and go back and watch it again and get something different the next time you watch it. Like that's potent television, you know, writing and potent filmmaking for that matter. And let's be honest, this show, again, we talked about it before, the cinematic nature of this show, there was nothing else like it on television. It was like watching a movie every week, like a 1 hour movie. And, you know, even in that level, there are few filmmakers who can just, who can layer something so beautifully to where rewatches are rewarded. That's a big thing that Lynch has always been really great at. Rewatching his films rewards you to do so, and Twin Peaks is no different.
Well, and knowing what we know now as we rewatch it, seeing that scene, there's other layers that get added onto that scene.
Yes.
And it's amazing how much of that, again, knowing that at the time they were filming it, whether or not Ray Wise knew what he was doing at the time, whether or not anyone else did or not, but it, you know, the levels that go, I mean, because you're right, all the levels that you said are there, but there's also this level of you're watching the killer grieve for his own actions, and all of that just adds really dark layers on top of it. Too.
Yeah, it's like inner turmoil of grief, guilt, shame.
Yeah.
And you know, of course, what we're going to find out is like, what is he fully in control of and what he's not fully in control of, you know?
Yeah.
It's really
I try to take solace in that. I don't think that Leland had control. He's a vessel, but I don't think he necessarily had control. That's the solace I try to give myself when I watch it. I'm not trying to get too ahead of ourselves into spoiler territory, but that's to me, I've always seen it that way. You know, that's just my take on it. Now, again, you can...
I lean more the other way. I lean more that Bob is the evil that men do, as opposed to Bob being a spirit that controls or a puppet master or anything like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's the great thing about it. Both of those interpretations are
both
completely
of them are
correct.
possible. Totally.
Yeah, they're both completely correct. I mean, however you play it, they're both completely correct. And I think that's the thing about it.
This is going to be a discussion down the road, but isn't there a reference of Leland talking about being abused or a stranger doing something to him as a child, and it was in the form of Bob?
Yes, so, if he wanted to play with fire.
Yeah.
And so that idea of the cycle of abuse and all of that sort of stuff that comes into it. I mean, again, just so brilliantly handled. And you're right. And either of those interpretations and others are all valid
They're all valid. Yes.
And as you see them, like, you can make legitimate interpretations of any of those ways of experiencing it. So and again, which adds to the brilliance of the
Oh, absolutely, yes. You know, this.
I have to ask you guys about this. The scene with this twigged in my memory, and when I was watching the episode, and then when you said it again, was he's talking to Diane in his tape recorder, overnight me that the earplugs. Then he sets his tape recorder down. How is she going to get the message to get him overnight the earplugs?
It must have gotten to her somehow because he got them.
Because she does get the earplugs to him.
I know. How did she do it? I don't get it. Because it is a tape recorder. It's not even like a
this is pre-cell phone internet. Yeah.
He would have had to overnight that thing, basically. You know, like it's hilarious. Or send it. Maybe he sends it to a local FBI office, and they call Diane for him and say, "Hey, Cooper needs you to overnight this to him. That's the only logic I can have, is that there's got to be a field office on the West Coast. He gets the tape sent to them. They make the call. It goes from there.
Yeah. Sorry,
So I
had
think
to
I'm
bring
gonna-
that up in terms of
Absolutely.
but it's little things like that just bring more joy to Twin Peaks. Like, even if it's not logical, it still just brings a little bit more joy to it, right? And that scene is great. Like, his frustration coming through and his anger, because he's so full of joy so often. It's interesting to watch Cooper's moods, like when he does, get the darker emotions coming out. And again, having now watched everything that we've watched, the different aspects of Cooper's personality and mood become even more interesting, I think, when you go back and reflect on them. So,
well, I also love the moment when they're in the diner and Sheriff Truman sees Hank, and he's already suspect Hank's up to something, and he's like,
he's got Hank's number.
He's like, people don't change. And, they're like, would you like coffee? And Truman's like, we got to go. And Cooper's like, you got to treat yourself just a little bit every day, a gift, no matter where it is.
Yeah.
You don't know. Just when it happens, it happens. And today,
it could be a new shirt. It could be a little nap, or it could be a piping hot cup of coffee.
Yeah.
That's one of those iconic moments that even though, like I said, I felt like there was a shift in these terms, they still snuck some of those little Twin Peaksy kind of moments in. That, the cherry stem, like there's a number of them sort of throughout, right?
Well, I think going into the next episode, because, we're talking about Audrey and her whole little investigation, it's like she's Nancy Drew and James and Donna are the Hardy Boys.
Yes, that's valid. That's very valid. That is.
Yeah.
Like they're doing their.
And she's a good segue, because
she's not Nancy Drew. She's Hester Prynne.
See, that's one of those naive things where I think to myself, like, if she had more experience, she wouldn't have come up with such an obvious fake name, even though someone in her profession would have a fake name. So, I mean, some of it covers it up, but still. I think she's a good segue, because we end on that scene and then the next episode starts with the remainder of that scene. And again, I understand that they did a rewrite on the set of that scene, that it was going to imply much more of the romance between Cooper and Audrey, and they decided to walk that back and have him do the responsible thing and let her down easy and send her away with her dignity and everything still intact. And it ends up being kind of a beautiful scene.
It's really sweet how he kind of, cools down the situation without like completely freaking out or yelling or anything. And I believe that was Kyle MacLachlan's choice. It may have been some other people in the room, but I believe one of his things, he's like, that just doesn't look good for my character. Like,
I think I heard that too, that it was his influence.
The thing I like about that scene too is Cooper does not embarrass her.
Absolutely. No.
He does not embarrass her. He doesn't shame her.
Nope.
It's just, hey, we really can't do this, but you know what? I can use a friend. Let me get us some fries and some malts. Like it's so perfectly Cooper.
Yes.
Like there is no better response that Cooper could have done than that. It's the most perfect Agent Cooper response. But I really do appreciate that their friendship, that bond, starts really right there. Yeah. And I love the fact that that Cooper at this point is very platonic about it, because the typical trope is, of course, he's going to fall in love with her and they're going to have this torrid romance in the midst of all of this, the investigation. That's absolutely not what they do here. They completely break that mold, and we're all better for it. Honestly. Yes. It plays so much better with that not being, again, I know she's 18, but it still just reeks of inappropriateness, because he's like double her age. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's an officer of the law on top of it.
A federal agent. Yeah. Like it's just, Cooper is the moral compass, man. Like he always goes the right path, and that's why we love Cooper,
But he's sensitive and understanding, right? He does it in such a mature way that I don't think man twice his age would handle that situation.
No. That's why we love Cooper. I mean, he really is like the knight in shining armor. He's just, he's just a good guy. Like it's impossible not to love Agent Cooper. He's an iconic character for so many reasons, and that scene is a prime example as to why, honestly.
One of my favorite scenes in the next episode, in episode 6, is the insurance agent and Catherine.
Yeah, that's so
I
good.
love that scene. Every time it comes on.
feels so much film noir in that little scene. Like,
yes,
it changes, and she's looking at it, and she's like, "I think I need to talk to my lawyer."
I think I need to talk to you. Yeah, dude, Piper Laurie plays the shit out of that scene. Like, it
so
is
good.
It's maybe her best scene in the season, honestly. It really may be. It's that good. Like, she is, God, the realization when she figures out what's going on, like, you just see the switch, and it's, oh man, she is like just awesome in that moment. It is, you're right, it's very film noir. But man, she's so good in that moment. Like,
what is it? You can't con a con artist? Like, she already knows. She already knows the tables are turning.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing I love about this episode is we get the setup for the Bookhouse Boys to go undercover.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
We're going to get a One-Eyed Jacks, baby. We're going undercover. And like, it's so much fun, like watching them, make their plan. Like, that stuff is so good. And again, it's connected to the murder of Laura Palmer, and it's also connected to so many other things because of what we know about Horn's department store and One-Eyed Jacks, what's going on, and the drugs, and there's so much connectivity here. And it's something, as an audience, you're like, oh man, they're getting so close now. Like, oh, this is it. Like, they're really getting there. We're gonna find out, who the murderer is. Like, you think it's all gonna answer all the questions, but it's such great buildup, man. It really is.
And you want to talk about a creepy scene. The creepiest scene in this episode is the department store manager talking to the other perfume girl about it's like, oh my God. Yeah, it's like, oh.
Her little unicorn he gives her. Oh man, eek. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and they're totally laughing it up later, but it's like, oh, that's like such a grooming, gross.
Oh, it's awful. And you're
Audrey manipulates that so well. Again, it's part of so wonderful to see her just exploit this guy for all that she can, right? And he deserves it, so it's all good. But again, the quintessential moment in this one is there's the cherry stem scene, right? There's the famous, she goes to One-Eyed Jacks. There's she plays the whole game. Blackie has her number, sees it all, sees through it all, and totally, but realizes that she's going to be good for it anyway, so brings her along.
Yeah, and she actually really did, to my knowledge, what I read, she really did tie that knot with her tongue. So yeah,
really,
that was actually something that she said, I can do this. Yeah, she said, I can do this. Watch, and they were like, oh well, we have to put that in. Like,
well, you did it.
There's so much. Again, we've danced around a little bit. Of course, the James Hurley, Donna, and Madeline. Obviously trying to solve the murder as well, and that's going to have a massive payoff in episode 8 or episode 7, the season finale. Massive payoff. Yeah. And I really love the fact that that Sheryl Lee got a chance to really be in this season, not just as a corpse and not just as a photo, but she really got a chance to do something. And again, her chops are there. She's really good. And her performance as Madeline is so very different from her performance of Laura. Even though it's the exact same person, it's amazing how different she is, and how she does such a good job with both roles. This is a really great setup. It's a good episode because the great thing is it's still interesting the whole time, but it is setting up everything for the season finale. Yeah. And that's a great thing for a show to be able to do, because if you're doing all the setup, but it's still an interesting episode, it's not just like we're just waiting to get to the next episode. We're literally still, waiting to see what the hell's going to happen. Like, how is this going to play out? That's a heavy lift, man. And this episode does a really good job of that, continuing to keep us, on the hook, not just, oh God, I can't wait for next week. Can't wait. No, we're really invested in what's going on in this episode too. So again, that's great. So we get, Bobby plants the cocaine in James's, engine, like you got all those things going into play. So there's so much going on here. the threesome, our little, detective trio finding out about, Dr. Jacoby, finding out about his meeting with Laura and stuff. So it's like they're making their plans there too. And that's going to have massive payoff in the season finale. So there is so much going on here. And of course, we're all nervous as hell for Audrey because she's really, Daniel in the lion's den. And it's just getting worse with each scene. Like it just keeps getting scarier and scarier and just horrific, So it's like, we know she's there, but the problem is she's now trapped. Like she is literally relying on that note she left for Cooper that he doesn't see.
Yeah.
She's relying on him to come and save her when he doesn't even know that he needs to save her. Like it is, as an audience, we know that she's left the note, but we also know that Cooper hasn't seen it. And it's just like, how is this going to end? So again, that's great, setup for the season finale. It's such a good episode. It really is.
I want to throw back quickly to the Audrey scene. Just one more comment, because I remember when I watched this the first time as a teenager, I was excited because this one, my city gets a call out. Audrey pretends that she worked the Calgary Stampede, and so when they mention that, and she does her whole oh, is Big Ed still running? Oh no, I can't remember who she says it was.
That's her dog's name, though.
Yeah, that's her dog's name. Yeah, but I was like, hey, as a teenager, and they mentioned my city on this American TV show. Of course, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, man, I get that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
but it's a great setup by Blackie to call her out on her bullshit. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, it shows Blackie's a smart cookie. She like, we find out more about her weaknesses and her messed up life down the road, but she's a force to be reckoned with too. She's the female characters in Twin Peaks are not to be trifled with, and they're not written in one.
No, and they're fully dimensional, interesting characters, and they're not just there to serve the purpose of the male protagonist in the story.
That's right.
No, they're actually the strongest characters in it, honestly. Like, if you think about
it. Oh, yes. Especially what so many of them have to go through.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They hold the cards. And Blackie, what she could do to Ben Horne if she were to go public, oh my God, she would absolutely ruin him. And
He'd be canceled.
She holds some real power there. And there's a reason why, Ben respects her to run that place when he's not there.
Yeah.
He's putting literally, he has a lot to lose if One-Eye Jacks, were to be exposed and his connection to it. So the fact that he trusts her says a lot about Blackie. It really does. She is absolutely someone to not be messed with. Not at all. Yeah. Like that woman.
She knows where the bodies are buried.
Exactly. And you know what? She hired the people to bury them. You know what I mean? Like she's that gal. Like she didn't have to do the work, but she's got a map that can show you where all the bodies are, man. Like she's that character, and she's great. I mean, she's
also in episode 6. There's a tiny little scene, which again, at the time, I believe the director wasn't aware, but the scene where Maddie sneaks out of the house and she walks past Leland, doesn't know he's there. He's sitting in the dark in the living room, and the way he looks at her, like,
it's very sinister. Yeah,
you just think, and the way they placed him there. At this, like watching, we don't know it's him watching her yet, but eventually we find that out. But the way they did that in a way that doesn't implicate him necessarily as the killer, but still, there's another completely rational explanation for why he's acting the way that he is.
Yes,
just so brilliant in the way that it all came together. And that scene now, I think the first time I rewatched it, I remember being like that Leonardo DiCaprio meme of him pointing at the screen. Yeah. That's what that was me. I was going, wait a minute, look at that. That scene is, again, I think a happy accident a bit in a way, but just really plays into the full circleness of everything.
Especially with rewatch, because you can sense the darkness and and especially how it's lit and how he's sitting. Yeah, you can sense all the sinister things going on there.
It's even creepier because the fact that she looks just like Laura. Like it just makes it that much creepier. Like he looks at her, and you just know that he looks at her and thinks.
And I wonder now. I've thought about this a few times. I wonder if Leland Bob is deciding, like seeing her look so much like Laura, if he's deciding that he might want to victimize her as well. And it might not have dawned on him until that moment. There's a part of me that wonders if maybe that's the case. And I don't know, we'll never have an answer for that, but there's a part of me that thinks that him seeing her that night, whether it's in that her sneaking out of the house or later watching her dressed as Laura by the gazebo, whether or not he's thinking to himself, you know, I want to now victimize her too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. If I ever met Ray Wise, I would just be like, man, I got to talk to you about, like, there are a lot of scenes I have questions about, Sarah. Like, as an actor, what did you know? What were you playing? Like, I would love to know that scene in particular. When you look at her in the dark, like, is that Bob looking at her, or is that Leland, you know, looking at her kind of concerned, kind of like, oh, where's she going? Like, I would love to sit and talk with him about how he played that part. And at what point, like in the making of the show, was he told that he was going, you know, to be involved with it the way that he is? The other big thing, of course, this episode ends with us seeing Hank on the other line, the whole set up for the arson. So now Hank has been brought into play here too. You know, and it's, you know, there's so many moving pieces with the sawmill that, again, we're just like, where is this all going to go? Is this going to happen? Is it not? Is someone going to stop it? If they don't stop it, you know, what happens? I mean, Jesus H, man, there's a lot that, again, this is a great episode because it sets up everything for the season finale, but man, it's also still keeping us like watching with bated breath throughout the episode. Like, what the hell is going to happen next? Again,
and you wonder, you wonder whose side has been on, like, and I think the answer is he's on his own side.
He's on his own.
Exactly. Yeah. He is on his own interest, even if it's even if it's to do his brother over. He's like,
but is he planning on betraying Catherine? Is he planning on betraying Josie? Is he planning on betraying both of them? Probably the last. But it's just so interesting. Like that whole soapy plot about the sawmill and Ghostwood and all of that stuff is just so delicious that way, because it is such wonderful. A great high camp soapy kind of plot line. That's just
he eats it up. He is chewing every bit of scenery he can to be as melodramatic as possible.
It's always, you know, going back and watching it, like Ben Horne is such an interesting character because he's so despicable, but at times you can see like his humanity still kind of is there. Like there are parts of him still there, which again, The Return has such wonderful payoff for that as well. It's that kind of stuff where you're like, man, I'm so glad that, you know, that we got The Return, because it really is interesting to see, you know, the ultimate outcomes, the ultimate payoffs for these characters. But as far as season 1 goes, God, he's a delicious villain. I mean, he is. So easy to
unlike
hate.
Those other characters we talked about, he does get redemption later, and he is more complicated, and there's decent sides to him. I mean, a lot of what he does is despicable, but he is more complicated. And you can see more humanity in him.
And that's again what makes him such an interesting character. Like, he's not a one-note villain, but boy, for the first season, he's deliciously evil. I mean, he's, you know, in what he's doing and who he's screwing over, you know, like, he's fun to watch, man. You just, he's easy. You love to hate him. You know, it really is. Like, you hate to love him, but you love to hate him. He's a very interesting character, to say the least. I mean, he's
if you're thinking about it from Mark Frost's point of view too, there's probably was a bit of, okay, we're taking Leo and Jacoby off the board and some of the more obvious characters. Ben's going to be our next distraction, so we have to build him in a certain way to be, because I know they actually filmed the famous, and I'm jumping ahead here, but the next murder scene, they filmed it with Ben as well as with Ray Wise. I'm not sure if you guys had heard that, but they did that partially as a distraction, but also partially as maybe some potential backup, the way they do sometimes.
Sure.
But, you know, they had to be developing Ben at this point to be able to potentially be the killer, or for people to believe that he was the killer, right?
Well, let's be honest. I mean, he is a despicable character. If you look at just what he's doing with the girls at the perfume counter alone, that man is a despicable man. And there is a special place in hell for him when it's all said and done. Redemption be damned. There is a special place in hell for that guy. And if you think about it in a roundabout way, he is partially responsible for Laura's murder. He absolutely is. He sent her down a path that put her to be a very vulnerable vulnerable target. And it just makes it even worse. She had nowhere to turn, not even to
Well-
him, who should be an adult. She should have been able to talk to, but he wasn't.
And we're supposed to believe that he was having sex with her, right? So, I mean, there's
Right.
that. Like, if
No,
from
we're
the
absolutely
diary,
supposed to believe that.
yeah. And One Eye Jack, her time at One Eye Jack's, like, there's no, like, yeah. I mean, he's not a good guy. I'm not saying any of that, despite the fact, like I said, that there's more sort of human and three, you know, sort of there's more to his character than, I don't mean to say more to his character than like Hank or Leo, but that again, there's like just nothing redeemable about them. But I mean, Ben is still, you know, very bad guy, and I don't want to imply that he's not. And then this episode ends, I think, with again, we don't know who it is at this point, watching Maddie dressed as Laura, and takes us again right into the next. These episodes, like, I mean, the whole series, the first season especially, is structured in this like one day, almost per episode kind of structure, and they lead right into another. But these last two really just felt like I was watching a continuous sort of story, because they, you know, we get right into James and Donna walking into Jacoby's office, which is, you know, tense and exciting and you know, nerve-wracking, because they're also kids, right? Like we were saying with Audrey, they're in way over their heads trying to solve this thing. But what I like about the final episode, this season finale, not the final episode, the season finale, is just how much of a season finale it is. It's like, you know, we've talked about Twin Peaks sort of being a comment on the nighttime serials, the nighttime soap operas, and how they would often end with a bunch of, you know, characters in peril. This one just throws everybody, as I was saying at the beginning, it's like the whole episode is just one storyline being like pushed right to the brink, and then the next storyline being pushed right to the brink, and so on, right?
Well, it even gets meta in this episode when Hank shoots Leo, and as Leo's being laying on the couch shot, the TV show within the show, like a character that's similar to Leo's character, has been shot.
Yes.
And it's like he has a realization moment. It's like, oh, I'm that guy.
But the thing that I want to say about this too is, while it's doing all of that, it's not doing it dishonestly or cheaply. Like, each one of those storylines is earned. Like, whether it's
absolutely,
like taking the pills, whether it's you know, Catherine and Shelley. I mean, you know, both
in the fire in the mill. Yeah.
Two disparate characters that you know, wouldn't interact generally very much at all, but there they are together. Like, each one of those storylines is earned. The Hank and Josie scene that you mentioned, yes, the final episode is one cliffhanger after another, but each one of those cliffhangers is completely earned, is completely honest in like, the story doesn't take cheap ways to get there. Audrey, you know, being almost walked in on by her dad, like, all of it culminating in the main character getting shot in the chest 3 times. Like, it's just by some unknown, we know who it is, but we don't at the time, some unknown shooter. Like, every one of those is legitimate. Every one of those the show has telegraphed and has worked towards. They haven't pulled any Deus Ex Machina crap. It's just, it's all honestly got to. Yeah.
Well, Kevin had talked about how good like season 1 is as a whole, and like, if you ever want to do a television show, this is the perfect example of how to do a season finale of a TV show too. It's like, we're gonna pay off all these things we've been building towards, but we're gonna leave you hanging with just enough that you're gonna come back in the fall because you want to know what the hell's going on.
Yep. I remember
And
being
talk-
devastated at the end of that episode and not knowing how I was going to wait however many months till the next.
Yeah.
People now don't know the pain because they can just go to the next episode.
Right. No, it
Yeah.
was a hell of a season finale, and again, there's so much to love in it. I mean, I love, of course, the Bookhouse Boys and their trip, to One-Eyed Jacks. That stuff is golden.
Yes,
Every single bit of it is golden, especially Ed with his
Right.
his like,
His wig, and then just how bad he is at
Yeah.
pretending.
Oh, I love Ed in every single scene in that.
Yeah.
And I love that they're all betting with federal money. It's just,
Yep, and then Cooper
Yeah.
actually being good at counting cards. He's like, I like to
course
get
he
about
is.
10 or 15% back of the Bureau's money.
well, and now that we know that everything is like exists all at once, I wonder if he's getting any lodge luck as well. Now that we like,
right? No, that's a valid point. I mean, he could be, getting a little bit of that, right there, man. Who's
Yep.
to say? And that could be what made him Mr. Money bag or money plots, whatever.
yeah.
In the return, but no, it's so good. That stuff is so good. Like it's just great. And then like the other stuff, of course, like again, we get the arrest of Jacques, and that's a big moment, man.
Oh, Andy for the hero moment,
Andy
right?
for the win, baby. Andy for the win.
He was practicing.
Yep. Never ever underestimate Deputy Andy Brennan. Never underestimate him. He's great. He's a wonderful, wonderful character. One of my favorites in the show.
Yeah.
But I love the fact that again, like we again start ratcheting up, the question of who's involved with the murder, because Leland shows up at the hospital, and poor Jacques Renault no longer sucks air. He's sucking pillow. And
But I think even at this time in the show, you're not even thinking he
Nope.
did it because of
no,
what we find out. You think, oh, he's the father. They say this is the killer of his daughter. He's gonna kill him.
yeah. Nobody would think anything different. They're just like, hey, he had it coming to him. He's a total piece of shit. And they absolutely
Watch his face, Ray Wise's face in that moment when you can see him, you can see Bob doing the killing. Like you don't see it at the first. You're right. Like it's so written so brilliantly. Like they put it right under your nose, but they give you every reason to look the other way.
Yep. I mean, it's the right note,
And when he talks to the doctor, Dr. Haywood, do you think he's making sure he's not there so he can do it? Or was he seeing if Dr. Haywood was going to give him a ride? I think it's okay, you're not going to be there.
That's exactly how I
Yeah.
think that's played.
Yeah, me too.
Is he doesn't want him anywhere near because he knows what he's going to do. He absolutely does not want him anywhere near it. So no, I believe that's absolutely the plan. I may be wrong on that, but I feel like when I watch that scene, that to me is him basically just saying, like, making sure, like, you're not going to be there, right? Because I don't need you spotting me when I show up there. I don't want you noticing me when I come by that room. Like, that's how I look at that. Is he's absolutely wanted to make sure that the doc's not there for two reasons. A, he wouldn't want to be noticed. He wouldn't want to be identified. But B, he would not want Doc Hayward to know that he did that. Like, their families are so closely knit that he would not want that.
No.
Because what? I think Leland even knows that Doc Hayward would probably lie for him. Would probably not throw him to the wolves if he did see it, and he doesn't want to. He's giving him basically the whole, if you don't know that I did this, then guess what? You would never ever know that I did this, and you don't have to testify about it. You would never have to. So I think there's layers to Leland, in this moment.
Absolutely.
Yep.
There's real layers there, and I think that's a big thing. I just think he wants to keep Doc Hayward as innocent and away from it as possible for many, many reasons. But for me, like I said, that's a huge moment. You've got, of course, the fire.
Yes, and getting to that scene, I love Piper Laurie's response because she already knows something's up. She's got her gun, and then she gets to Shelly, and she's like, "Well, I can't understand anything you're saying." Well, of course you can't. She's got a in her mouth, and she's just so calm as the bomb goes off. And
like, oh yeah,
But again,
You know-
Catherine's not a good person either, but she does
Yeah.
trying to save Shelley. She could have
Yeah.
run out of there, but no,
Yeah.
she's not gonna let somebody just get burned alive.
No, but you know,
And-
the MVP of that moment, man, is Pete Martell.
Right, he still
Yes.
runs in
He's
there
like,
to
"She's
get
still
her.
my wife, man. She's still my wife." And that dude goes in there. Pete Martell, man, he's a real one. I'm just saying, Pete Martell is a real one. That
Yeah.
guy had no reason to go in there, honestly, because Catherine's been nothing but awful to him the entire season. He has no reason to do it, but damn it, she's still his wife, and he took an
Oh,
oath.
there's a great moment with them too, because there's like a really tender moment when she's wanting his help, right?
Yeah.
Because he knows about the cooked books.
Yeah.
He does. Yeah,
And then they're going through the things, and then there he is reminiscing about high school, and she gives him a look like, "What
Yeah.
are you talking about?"
yeah.
And I
I-
like to think in that scene that Catherine's again more complicated than that. She's not just manipulating him; she is manipulating, but she's not just manipulating him. I think she actually does deep down care about him. They've
Oh, she
just had
does.
so much water under the bridge.
Yeah.
And I think the later in season 2, I think supports this theory that she
Yes.
still loves him, and they start to build some of that back up again.
Yeah.
But I do think that when she rolls her eyes at him, she's like, yeah, there is some truth to what she's saying about like find that, what we used to love each other thing. But there's also, but we don't have time for this. Like,
Yes.
right now.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
a really good way to interpret that. It is, yeah, I get it, but no, dude, I got money involved here. I've got a possible life insurance situation. Pete, I need you to help me. I need you to focus. I need you to look here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the scene with Leo trying to kill Bobby, who
Yes.
then but Leo almost gets shot, doesn't die, but almost gets killed by Hank. Bobby and it reminded me a little bit of it twigged in my mind a little bit of the beginning of the movie, because there's an axe, there's a TV, he falls against
Yes.
the TV, it's not exactly the same. Then he looks out and he just sees Hank. I don't think Hank sees that Bobby was there.
No.
Good for Bobby.
No,
Yeah, because Bobby be dead.
Bobby be dead. Yeah.
Yep. That's a really exciting scene, because again, a whole bunch of people that are pretty despicable. Bobby's of course more likable, but he's still not great at this
no,
point.
he's not-
in the
he's not
season.
perfect.
No, he's a little shit right now.
Yeah, he's a little
That's
shit.
a good
He
way to
gets
put
the
it. He
big
is a little
redemption
shit,
arc
yeah.
in season 3, but
Especially because he has such good parents too.
Yeah, Major Briggs is one of those characters that we'll talk more about as we get into season 2 and
yes,
stuff. But
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember what episode where he has the conversation with Bobby at the diner about the dream that he had about Bobby's future.
yes,
It is one of the most beautiful moments.
Yeah.
Like every time I watch it, it brings a tear to my eye. It really does, because it's the kind of thing that as a kid you would want to hear your father say. And even as despicable as Bobby can be, we also know that deep down Bobby is still a kid. He is.
Mhm.
And he's been, through Laura Palmer, manipulated into things he didn't want to do, like selling drugs, getting involved with people like Leo. Bobby is, God, no, he's not perfect, but he's not like
he's
evil.
not the bad guy.
No, he's not evil. He's
Yeah.
just a he's just
I
a
guess in Dungeons
dumb.
and
Little shit.
Dragons,
Whoever
it could
said
be
that,
like-
Yeah,
right.
that was me. But I think he actually loves Shelley too.
Oh, he really does. No, I thoroughly
Yeah.
believe that. I think if he was in D&D, he'd be chaotic neutral. Like he's not
Yeah.
chaotic evil, but he's not chaotic good. He's chaotic neutral. He'll eventually get to that chaotic good.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, again, what a payoff in the return
Yes,
for Bobby
Mhm.
Briggs. My
Yeah.
God in heaven. Like, I didn't know how much I needed that payoff, but man,
Yeah.
that payoff. And
Yeah.
again, we'll get to the return, but goodness gracious, Bobby, what you think of him in season 1, where he ends up when it's all said and done, is not at all where you think he would be. And we're all better again for having the return in our lives. Major Briggs is such a great character. And of course, his mother as well. They're just such beautiful, sweet people. And you had talked about way early on about how, like, usually the military guy is the asshole. Like, he's the strict, tough guy.
right.
And Major Briggs is absolutely not that. Like, he's the most-
Yeah.
He's spiritual and
he's very spiritual. I love that
esoteric,
about Major
yes.
Briggs. He's so
Yeah.
spiritual.
yeah.
He's understanding. He's caring. He's willing to listen.
Oh,
Like- He's
such
not
a-
even mad about Bobby being rebellious. He's like, I
No,
respect
he
your
respects him.
rebellious.
Yes, like
Yeah, I
Don Davis is so
understand.
good in that role. Oh, I love Major Briggs so much, like so much.
It's just a very calming voice too.
Yeah,
Like,
he's a voice of reason, and he's what a father would want your father to sound like. You know, he's just so calm and reasonable, and really trying to have a connection with Bobby. You know, like all throughout the season, the scenes we see with him and Bobby, he's really genuinely trying.
Yeah.
Whether it's in Jacoby's office or before Laura's funeral, like he's really trying to tell Bobby, like, look, man, I know you don't think I understand you, but I really want you to tell me what you're thinking. So yeah, Bobby is one of those characters, like he is not the way he is because of his parents. It's just
yeah, I was
He's not
doing the
that way.
parallel between James and Bobby because
Right.
James has a horrible,
Family
Oh,
situation.
horrible.
Yeah.
family situation other than Ed.
Other than Ed,
And he's a genuinely good, nice
yeah,
person.
Bobby's a
And
good
Bobby,
guy. I mean,
Bobby
he's
has
good guy.
Well,
and
and
Bobby
Twin
has a
Peaks-
great home.
Right. Sorry. I was just going to say Twin Peaks ends up being about families, being about fathers and children. So I talked before in some of these episodes about the different father-daughter relationships. See, Donna and her dad,
Yes.
Audrey and her dad, Laura and her dad.
Yeah.
But we also have Bobby and his dad and James and his mom. Like it ends
Yeah.
up having these, like it really ends up exploring a lot of these themes about this, because again, that's what Lynch is interested in, this Americana, like the underneath the veil of the traditional town family, right?
Yeah.
And so the story's really exploring that by giving us different examples of those sorts of
The
things.
nuclear family is not exactly perfect anymore.
Exactly.
Like that's the thing.
No.
And Lynch grew up.
Is not a Norman Rockwell painting.
Yeah. Lynch grew up, in the era of the nuclear.
Well, he's a
family.
baby boomer. He's the same age as my dad. He's the same age as Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
He grew up in the 50s and 60s.
Every family had a mother and a father, and like everything was supposed to be like you just lived your life the way society told you you're supposed to live it. And I love the fact that he's showing the underbelly of that perfect home life that you think someone has. They may not have that at all. We think Laura Palmer must have a perfect home life. She's the homecoming queen. She's the most popular girl in school. Everybody loves Laura. Everybody adores her. And she has the absolute worst life of anyone in the whole damn town.
And the darkest secrets.
Oh,
and you find out so many people in this town knew and were perpetrating a lot of these dark things happening
let's
too.
go back to the funeral. Bobby's speech
Yeah.
at the funeral is so spot on. It's so spot on. It is the most correct assessment. Everybody was involved with her murder. Everybody had a part to play. You all knew what was going on, and you did nothing.
And you did nothing.
Yeah. I mean, Bobby's
a bunch of hypocrites.
Yeah. I mean, and save your prayers because Laura would have laughed at him. Like, yeah, man, he calls it beautifully. And again, like leading up to this final episode, like there are so many, again, this is such an episode of payoffs, but again, it's such an episode of cliffhangers for every single storyline. We have payoffs for every storyline, but then we're left with such incredible cliffhangers for each of them as well.
Yeah.
Man, like that's masterful.
Can we quickly talk about one of the fact that Wally Brando is being is referenced in this episode? Like, so it's one of the minor cliffhangers, but we do get a resolution to the whole why is
Lucy mad?
Why is Lucy?
Yeah,
mad?
I was gonna say we get a really sweet, tender moment, but we get paid off with that whole little story, which gets referenced right before the whole arrest thing. Truman's like, "Is Lucy talking to you?" And he's like, I forget what Andy says, and Truman just says, "Women."
Yeah.
Which he's having his own women problems.
But it's like when you think about who the father of Wally Brando is, and of course we'll get into more of that in the second season, but it's just like, man, like there's a lot going on there in that moment. And again, you don't realize the payoff.
We don't know it all yet. That's
I
one
will
of
say
the minor of the cliffhangers in this episode.
But man, it's a cliffhanger that has such incredible payoff in the return. Because even though we only get one scene with Wally Brando,
It is one of the best moments in the return.
It is one of those moments. One of my best friends, Brian Haynes, he and I watched Twin Peaks back in the day together. We would call each other after every episode of The Return to catch up and see what we were thinking about it. And I just for that night, I just called and he picked up the phone. And he just goes, "Wally effing Brando." That's for the whole conversation.
Yeah, we'll talk about Wally when we get.
Yeah, we'll get down there. We'll get down there. But
I just love that
there is that little.
He's
setup,
in this episode.
He is technically there. Yes, he is.
Yeah.
But no, when you look at how this all pays off again, the final scene of Cooper, walking back to his room, finding the note from Audrey. Yeah. And then, of course, turning around to the door and pop, pop, pop. That is one of those moments where, it was like that Who Shot JR kind of moment. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, they shot Cooper."
Yeah.
And all you hear is Andy on the phone. Agent Cooper, Agent Cooper, are you there? And it just goes to black, and
You hear the body fall, though. You hear him fall.
You hear the
after
fall.
That goes to black, which I'd forgotten about.
Oh. Man, that is that's potent. I mean, that is one of the best season finales you'll ever see.
But again, they didn't have to think later. There's that scene in Misery where Annie goes off about how he didn't jump out of the freaking car, right? And this doesn't do it. It sets up the fact that he's wearing a bulletproof vest. So
yes, it does.
It doesn't. It doesn't cheap out on the way it's going to get out of this situation.
Not at all. Not at all. That's the great thing about it. There is payoff to it. There really is. But we also know that he was taking the vest off, so it gets underneath, which is, there really is a gut shot. He really does take, a real slug to the gut.
Oh yeah.
But it's why he doesn't die basically from the shot to the chest. It's what keeps him there, because he really was prepared because of the night at One Night Jack's. So it's really such a great payoff. They did not Deus Ex Machina that at all. It's absolutely there. They talk about it there. It's going on. So when you get to the season 2 finale or the season 2 premiere, that's not a cheap cop out. That's not one of those that it was they sort of retroed that in. Oh, but don't remember he was wearing a jet. No, he tells us he's wearing it. We know he is. So that's a great setup. There's just still really.
Shooting up your main character and then going to black is
that's a bold move.
Yeah.
It really is if you think about it, because the show really was an homage to soap operas. That is the homage to Who Shot JR.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
JR gets shot, we go to black, and everybody's like, what?
Because it's not just he was shot, it's who the hell shot him?
Who shot him, exactly. Right. And it's the same thing. It's the same Who Shot JR. It is part and parcel. Those two things are. You can't have one without the other. It is Who Shot JR, but in this case, it's Who Shot Cooper. Yeah. And it was the talked about thing over the summer. Oh my God, who do you think did it? Well, you have a list of people who it makes perfect sense why they were. That's again the great.
And we don't find out for a while. They don't solve that one in episode.
No, that's not right out the gate.
Season premiere. Yeah.
No.
And do you know when Kyle MacLachlan, how far into season 1 they were when he hosted Saturday Night Live?
I think it was.
Oh man, I think that was.
It was. I don't remember, but
I want to say that the season had finished. No,
it
wasn't finished yet because
I think it was September. I think it was waiting for season 2 to start, and after the summer that it was Saturday Night Live.
That sounds right, because I think they did talk about the fact that he had been shot. But that is, I'll go ahead and put that out there. That's maybe my single favorite episode of Saturday Night Live in history. Is that entire episode hosted by Kyle MacLachlan? The Twin Peaks sketch, absolutely brilliant. The opening monologue is hilarious, but the Sprockets sketch with Germany's most disturbing home videos is one of the single funniest sketches in the history of Saturday Night Live. That episode, top to bottom, is chock full of win. Kyle MacLachlan needs to be back on SNL every year. He's so good.
He's actually a really good comedic actor. Even though he mostly plays corrupt rich guys now.
Yeah.
Even him popping up in Confess Fletch was great. Him being into
Yeah. He had a really great cameo. If you haven't seen The House with the Clock in Its Walls, that's a really fun horror flick. And he has a fun part in that as one of he's one of the main characters. I'll just say that. But It was really good to see him in that role. I was like, man, that's so cool to see Kyle MacLachlan popping up in that. It's a really cute movie if you've not watched it.
Colin, you're right. He hosted the 16th season premiere
There it is.
of Saturday Night Live, September 29th, 1990. So, yeah, it was after season 1 had been on TV, which I guess makes sense that the whole sketch about who the killer is.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's Chris Farley as Leo Johnson, where he's like, I did it. He's like, I just told you I did it. Look, here are pictures. Here's me. Here's me with Lawrence corpse. Like, it's just like he's going through the whole thing. And I love how at the beginning, Kyle MacLachlan's doing like the monologue, and he's like, so who has any questions about Twin Peaks? And someone's like, hey, who killed Laura Palmer? He just goes, it was Leo Johnson. And then all of a sudden you hear Kyle, you have a phone call. And it cuts to a picture of David Lynch, and it's like voice on the phone, David.
Yeah.
It's like, oh. It's so good, man. It's so
one
good.
thing I noticed rewatching the season finale is as Audrey's getting ready for her first night at One Eye Jacks, Blackie has her pick a card.
Yes.
Which is, and she picks the diamonds. And then I was remembering, like, in season 2, there are the queen of different suits are applied to her and Shelley and Donna, I think. I don't think it's Annie, surprisingly. But did she get the Queen of Diamonds again in that one? I want to go back and check now, or was it different? Like, at first I was wondering if that's a throwback, if they thought of that and threw back to this episode. I have no idea. I'd
have to go back and look. Yeah, I'd have to go back and look. I'd be willing to bet it is, though. I'd be willing to bet it is.
Yeah.
That's another great, another great cliffhanger. Like, as she's waiting there and Ben walks in.
My God, that's so.
If he did see her, she would have been fine. He would have gotten.
Yeah, because
she would have shipped him the first bus back to Twin Peaks.
Yep.
Yeah,
in some ways she should have just let him see her, and then she would have been okay.
It is an intense scene, though, man. Like such of the things that dreams are made of. Like, it's just like ick. Everything about that is gross. There's a lot to love about this episode. There's a lot to love about this season. It has been a real treat getting to come back, to it with you guys and getting different perspectives on it, because it's, again, I think it's, Twin Peaks remains my favorite show of all time. And this stands, of course, again, the test of time as being one of the best seasons of television you'll ever watch. And a lot of that, I think, too, is the brevity of it. I just feel like sometimes, when you look at The Walking Dead, I think the first season of The Walking Dead, which was only like 6 or 7 episodes, is a really great season of television. Same with Lost. The first season of Lost was only like 8 episodes, and it's a fantastic season of television. It's when it starts getting forced to go to the spread that it becomes like, this is where we can kind of
start finding filler.
Yes.
Have to start, and so many shows, even streaming shows that go to 10, like I find often that should have been 6. Or
they definitely say that for 12 and 13 episodes. They're like, this really would have been tighter in like a 6 to 8 episode series. Like even stretching it to 12 or 13 sometimes feels like filler. But getting into the whole Walking Dead, that's a whole nother podcast about
yes, that is.
That's what happened between season 1 and season 2.
Yeah.
And is part of the tragedy of why Frank Darabont is not working anymore really actively is because that whole experience just kind of killed him.
That's a shame, because he really is the real greatness behind that first season is Frank Darabont, and it's a shame to see him leave that. But I guess as we're wrapping up season 1, of course, when we come back, we'll be back to the beginning of season 2. Just I guess maybe final thoughts on the season, because it's amazing how much goes on in this season. Cody, you're always the question guy, but we'll start with you. What are your final thoughts on season 1 of Twin Peaks?
I think everything you guys have said. I think this is I think these are 8 perfect episodes of television. I think it's really, we talk about really what David Lynch is doing in this show. I think Blue Velvet was a warm-up to what he does with this show. And I really do think, and we will get, eventually to the 10 feature films, but I really think this is his magnum opus, and this is this first season is a good standing of what makes this so brilliant. And I mean, Mark Frost is as much as credited
yes.
as David Lynch
Yes,
is.
you have to give Frost that credit. Absolutely.
Yes.
But yeah, it really is damn fine television, as
Yes.
Agent Cooper would say.
Yeah.
Colin, for you, going back and looking at the first season, man, like,
Yeah,
what are your thoughts, man?
it's a bit of a cliche to say that Twin Peaks changed television, but it absolutely did. Like, again, I'm of an age where I was just a teen when it came on, so I don't have as great a sense of what TV. But now, having seen a lot of television from before that era and what came next, like, it really did just expand what TV could be, and what mainstream, like, network television could be.
Yes.
It for me, it changed what I expected from episodic, television, from like long form storytelling. It changed what I thought, and it exposed it's Twin Peaks that made me start seeking out movies by auteur directors, starting with Lynch, but with other ones as well, and really exposed me to, hey, there's a whole other way of making movies and television that I was not aware of before in my youth, right? So I don't think it's an exaggeration, even if it's a cliche. I don't think it's an exaggeration or inaccurate at all to say that it changed television. I think
I think it does get credited as kind of becoming that first entryway to what we would get in about less than 10 years, like where we get like a lot of these cable and HBO shows that are considered, the groundbreaking dramas.
Sure.
But I think they wouldn't get there without Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And before this, what other auteur filmmaker, maybe Michael Mann, like really like drove into TV like this before?
Yeah, I mean, Michael Mann, what he did with Miami Vice, man, you really can't put too fine a point on that. It was a cultural zeitgeist moment in the 80s, man. He perfectly encapsulated it. It was, and again, very cinematic television. I mean, it was not your typical cop drama. It looked different. It felt different.
Well, and there was prestige TV before. There was Roots. There was MASH.
Hill Street Blues.
There was a lot, but again, I think this shifted again what the expectations could be, and really opened the floodgates to what we call prestige TV today.
Yeah, I concur with that statement completely.
But again, it still has never been replicated.
No.
Because
they've tried.
The unique magic that of the quirkiness, the Lynchian, the Frostian, the merger of those two things has never really been replicated at all, and it remains a special, I think, piece of pop culture that will never be that will always remain unique.
Yes, there's nothing else like it. Period.
And I think we're gonna get to it when we get to season 2, because there's a character that'll pop up that actor will pop up on another iconic television series show of the 90s, and I think this television show is very much a big influence on that pop
very
culture
much so.
phenomenon.
Yes, very much so. Yeah. Again, before we wrap up, I just want to give a shout out to all of our folks fighting the good fight for SAG-AFTRA and the Writers Guild. Again, we just appreciate what you guys are doing. Keep fighting the good fight. No more Chat GPT scripts. We want real people. It's crazy that we're at a point now where the writers and actors are going to have in their clauses, in their contracts, that you will not, these things have to be done by humans.
Right.
But that's where we are.
That's ridiculous. And
Brian had a thing about it. He was interviewed about it, and he's like, yeah, we're literally having to put that stipulation in our contracts that actors have to be like human and the writers have to be human. It's crazy that we're through the looking glass at this point. But again, I just would tell everybody who's watching this, if you can get a physical copy of Twin Peaks, buy that physical copy. Support the people who made that. Support the David Lynch's, the Mark Frost, everybody involved with it, because streaming is where they're losing so much revenue that they should be getting, and they're not getting it hardly. I mean, pennies on the dollar. And you got so many actors who they're just trying to make a living. They're acting as one of the jobs that they do. So to those out there fighting the good fight, man, we love you, we support you, and we can't wait to see this thing finally get resolved so that we can get back to more creative work both in front of and behind the scenes, man. Just it's that simple. We just want to see more good work coming out, more original stuff coming out, but we can't do that until these jackboots running the studios actually listen to the people and really start giving us what we deserve. So here,
yes,
to those folks, we salute you. Keep fighting the good fight, man.
Yes, and you can do it because of studios like A24 and Neon can reach the agreements and stipulations of what they need, which is what I understand why Adam Driver is able to be promoting
and AMC
Ferrari.
just reached the deal, so they're going to move forward with the Walking Dead spin-offs and the Interview with the Vampire season 2, which I'm really happy about. So it can be done. You're right. They can meet the demands.
Yep. I mean, good for A24 for leading that off, man. That was an awesome thing to hear. So, again, just to those guys, thanks for doing it. And for those who are still on the lines, we see you, we love you, we support you. Your voices are being heard, your faces are being seen, man. We're all pulling for this to end as quickly as possible. And I hope that it ends very soon so that we can go into 2024 with a whole new slate of cool stuff coming, really good content, and hopefully maybe even something new from folks like David Lynch. It'd be nice to see him come out with something new for us in 2024. Who knows? But regardless, to those of you out there, man, we are totally supporting you. We love you, and can't wait for this thing to be resolved so you can get back to work and start putting out good content for us.
There was a rumor circulating last year that he had some unknown film that was going to drop.
Yeah.
But it was just David Cronenberg, because they're like, new David Cronenberg and David Lynch movie dropping, and it's like, no, not a David Lynch.
No,
but what do you?
I'm happy to get new David Cronenberg content too.
Oh, absolutely, yes, that's a podcast in its own right. Yeah, Cronenberg is phenomenal.
What do you?
Best exports.
What do you guys feel about 2 weeks from now for episode 1 and 2 of season 2?
So how many are we doing? Are we doing the season premiere and
the next just 2?
I would say 2, because that season premiere has a lot going on.
It's a 2-hour episode. Yeah.
Is it?
Season premiere on maybe the first episode after that.
Yeah, 8 and 9, I guess, is what they're numbered, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Work?
Yeah. I was just thinking 2. Yeah. Okay.
Because 8 you could talk about just on
we
its
could
own.
do a whole podcast
almost
on that
a movie
sure.
on its own, but I think we could squeeze in 9 as well. But any more might be hard.
Yep.
No, that works. Okay. Well, I will see you guys in 2 weeks.
Enjoy your Labor Day.
Yes, enjoy your Labor Day. And you all have a good night. Bye.
Good night. Bye-bye.